guys, welcome back to the BatCast. I'm Evan.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Malik.
Our last episode, we talked about a lot of different things, including number one, bats are neat and helpful, both in the environment and to us. We talked about ecotourism a little bit, we talked about the spread of white nose syndrome, and we talked about all the different ways that we're damaging not only the environment for bats, but bats themselves, such as light pollution and windmills. Now, in this episode, we're discussing things that are specific to Arkansas. For example, what kind of danger are bats actually in? What statistics do we have?
I have some statistics on hand from the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission in 2022. I don't know, I couldn't find anything more recent than that, but it'll have to do. The northern long-eared bat has seen a 98% fall in number. In September, the USFWS proposed listing the tricolored bat as endangered as well, because their population has dropped 70 to 80%.
But the ones that we have that are actually listed endangered are the Ozark big-eared bat, the gray bat, and the Indiana bat. Which, the gray bat is actually native to Blanchard Springs. And the Ozark big-eared bat we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode.
Yeah, so we've established that they're very much getting smacked out of the sky, as Josh said. Wind turbines have a big hand in this, and an increasingly big hand over the next 15 years. Currently, over 500,000 bats die from wind turbines each year, which is insane. So yeah, in Arkansas though, they're not much of a deal because we're relatively low on green energy in general, but especially on wind energy, we're also pretty flat.
Also, the green energy that we are using, that we are seeing an increase in, is mostly solar energy as opposed to wind energy. There's been a huge increase in Arkansas of solar energy in the last few years because of the amount of counties that are paying people to install solar.
All right, let's talk about ecotourism.
So, in the way of ecotourism, we mentioned briefly last episode about how people exploring one cave after another end up tracking things like white nose syndrome into caves that haven't been infected yet, and that's been a very big deal. But human activity disturbs bats in other ways. For example, human activity can disturb hibernation periods, and this has become a lot more of an issue recently as we've observed bats waking up in the middle of hibernation, especially in maternal colonies. And when that happens, some female bats end up dropping their young, and those young end up dying from the fall because they can't fly yet. Now, for most animals, they kind of factor in that not a lot of their offspring are going to live, so they have quite a lot of babies. Bats, however, usually have 1 to a max of 4 kids per year, so their population naturally decreases on its own a lot due to just the birthing rates, and the disturbing of hibernation periods only makes it worse.
In particular, with the case of ecotourism, we have seen a lot of caves being closed down. Like in particular, like there are like protected areas.
Just about every nature reserve besides Blanchard Springs National Park was closed down until further notice.
Decontaminate your clothes, decontaminate your shoes before entering and after entering caves, because we are a big factor in tracking that stuff from cave to cave.
Also, during that closing period, I believe, even though Blanchard Springs was open, they closed their deeper cave tours. And I know because I went during one of the periods where everything was closed off. They did a very short tour of areas that were much closer to the entrance where bats no longer roost. So we didn't see any bats on during the entire tour, which is honestly good. But I know some people had an issue with that.
So, if you're wondering why Blanchard Springs has not been closed, even though it should be, is for the very reason that it was closed, that other parks were closed in the first place. Ecotourism. It is one of the most high-earning attractions in Blanchard Springs, so they couldn't just close it down. It would pretty heavily affect the economy. Ecotourism is important still because it does spread awareness just the existence of these very important animals. So it's not so much that we have to eliminate ecotourism, but that we have to modify it so that we're not just being humans and spreading our filth everywhere we go, as humans do.
We love our national parks, folks. And also, part of the benefit of keeping some national parks open is that you can set up fundraiser areas. Like how, even though Hot Springs doesn't have a lot to lose with bat research, they're not as deep in the problem as Blanchard Springs. They still host fundraising events and help raise money for especially the white nose syndrome cause.
So let's talk about WNS, white nose syndrome, more specifically about Arkansas. Just recently, the conservation survey showed about 93% decline in little brown bats in 23 caves at the epicenter of WNS. So that is a huge damaging blow for much of that area. Besides that, we're still trying to figure out how WNS is this devastating to such a large group of animals and such a variety and wide array of animals too. Research is relatively light on WNS and especially the spread. We know the basics. It's a fungus. It's predatory. It latches on. We don't know how specifically it like spreads between bats, between humans, but just knowing that it exists has given us basically a small picture of what to avoid for like this unseen epidemic. But as we talked about with ecotourism, WNS is able to spread from bat to bat, bat to cave, and cave to cave. So, as a fungus, it can spread with relative ease as long as there's contact. It's also relatively not native to Arkansas. I mean, it is somewhat now because it's been around for so long, but it's more in line with like Eastern North America and Europe. So that is part of the reason why bats in Arkansas and pretty much the rest of the North Americas and somewhat of Mexico have been struggling so much with white nose syndrome is because they're just not used to it. The research that we do have shows that is able to use enzymes to digest the lipids and proteins on the skin of bats, and by doing so, they eat away the bats while they're still alive. And this doesn't directly kill them, but basically the bats, um, over time, about a few weeks, they will slowly start losing body mass. They will basically starve to death, and that's why like 90% of them will just straight up perish due to starvation. So it's not the WNS that kills them; it's the starvation from the WNS eating away at them that kills them.
Also, not only does it damage their skin, but it damages their wings, so it impacts their ability to fly, which also leads to their death.
But yeah, I did like talking about this. It's where you just get to see what the underlying biology behind this is. The more we understand about the small picture aspect of this, with how it spreads, the better we can devise solutions. So this is very important to talk about and very important to actually invest more research into this. Arkansas specifically, Arkansas State University has received funding from the U.S. Wildlife and Fish Commission to continue their research on WNS and how it actually infects its host. This is a thing now, the shoe mic, it's real. And it's here to stay.
Grants, man. What I'm talking about is that we already have like a foundation to help the bats, like especially in things like the Arkansas Wildlife Action Plan. This is all we really need. Like, it is an irritating thing to say, but the biggest thing we need right now is kind of money to be able to fund all of these conservation efforts. A big blind spot in a lot of areas is lack of research. Like we've talked in length about how little we know about white nose syndrome, how it spreads, how it like works biologically, and being able to research that kind of thing is very important to be able to combat it, as well as being able to research like what is best for bats, how do we better conserve them.
So yeah, we've talked about some action taken in Arkansas, and we obviously haven't gotten past the curve yet. So we have to kind of understand what we have to lose if we're gonna, like have some personal stake into this. Because really, that's a really big motivator is just having personal stake and something to lose from all this. So what we stand to lose, we actually stand to lose a lot.
So I know you had written down some of the things that we stand to lose in agriculture, specifically the types of foods that we have to lose. And I'm I'm not sure about all of this, but you've written down peaches, cloves, bananas, agaves, and even tequila.
So yeah, tequila, because agaves are the main ingredient of traditional tequila. So that's something to note. You
We
gotta
drink
handle.
tequila in the U.S. I mean, we don't drink because all three
Well,
of us
it's
will
made
be
like,
all three of us will be at 19 by the end of this week, so we do not drink. But I know my family would be very upset if they did not have their tequila.
usually fairly loud.
Because I'm talking right by the
Oh yeah,
mic.
you talked pretty loud.
Because this is how I talk whenever I'm just chilling, and then the mic is like, oh my god!
I
Enough
see.
distraction.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean they what is it? So yeah, pollinating bats, they contribute to a lot of our agriculture, a lot of our agriculture products. So besides being effective pollinators, they're also incredibly important um, animals for pest control. I know as Lane and the others are talking about ethanol and corn specifically. Um,
Corn syrup tastes pretty good, by the way.
yeah, we have heard a lot about that. But for corn alone, bats save about like $1 billion every year, which is insane. And then for agriculture overall, they save about $3 billion in pest control. And besides the actual capital that we save, they also help to reduce the use of pesticides. So besides saving us a little bit of money here and there, we're also like saving the surrounding ecosystem by just having bats healthy and eating. It's a win-win for everyone. Just having bats and taking care of them, and they are able to actually integrate pretty well into our agricultural economy. Besides agriculture, an interesting statistic, an interesting
Got it. Good.
statistic. Okay. Besides that, an interesting statistic. I'm gonna kill myself.
Stop. It's okay. It's okay if you don't say the word statistic right. It's a hard word. Right.
Besides that, an interesting
Statistic.
is that 95% of all seed dispersal in early forests is done by fruit bats. So if we're thinking about habitat restoration and reclamation, like bats are incredibly important to if they're not there when the reclamation starts, it's going to be a lot slower. It's going to be a lot different from the natural proceedings of habitat reclamation if we do not have bats. So besides agriculture, besides saving money, they also like help actually keep nature alive and in balance with our human civilizations. As the rice capital of America and a huge farm powerhouse, I think it's pretty important that we consider how they integrate well with our farmlands and consequently the reclaimed land that's given back to nature. Because bats have a hidden potential, I swear. Probably, maybe, maybe. Sure.
They
Certainly,
have visible potential already. That's pretty dang important.
yes. I'm playing this out. That's why I'm playing around.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we definitely have a lot to lose. And it is important what we have started, but we definitely still have a lot more room to go. Shall we wrap things up?
Evan, what are we talking about next episode? I don't know, man.
Why would you ask me a question?
So
Resolution.
next episode we're gonna be looking more into solutions to the issues that we talked about in this episode and somewhat in the first episode. So
Right, because even though more research on white nose syndrome would be great, there's other ways that we're trying to lessen our impact on bats.
Non-technical solutions, as Harden would call them, even though he hates them. But so yeah, fun fact: bats are the only flying mammal that we have left. We used to have many more, but they got weaned down pretty quickly after the Ice Age. Probably. Yeah, the windmills.
The prehistoric windmills.
But yeah, figuring out how we can make wind turbines bat friendly is another thing we'll be exploring in the next episode. But yeah.
So, loyal listeners, many of you. There's so many of you, man.
It's such a wide
This
audience.
isn't a proper ending. I don't know how to end things.
See you next time.
That's a good one. See you next time.
On the BatCast.
On the BatCast.
That was really loud. I'm sorry. Fade to music.